Jams, jams, jams. Picture books and jams. Welcome, everybody, to PBJamz.
Good morning or afternoon, whenever it is, or evening maybe. It's evening for Rachel and me here. So whenever you're joining us for this episode of PBJamz, we are very happy to have you here today. And also joining us today is Rachel Hobbs, who is the author of Tango Red Riding Hood. And that book is illustrated by Carolina Vasquez and published by Gnome Road Publishing. And welcome, Rachel. So glad to have you here today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So excited. This is such a fun, just a super fun book. It's bilingual. It is a twisted fairy tale and just so many fun things about it. So I'd love to talk first of all, just digging right in about your inspiration for this book and how it came to be.
Yeah, so I was listening to a lot of audiobooks and I was listening to one in particular, and I'm going to go ahead and tell you what it is because I haven't been saying what title it was, but it was the I don't know how to say it, Caraval series by I think her name is Stephanie and it ends her last name with the G. I'll have to look that up. But I was listening to the very last book, and the main character, I'm not going to give any spoilers, but the main character walks into like a ball. It's hard for me to remember the details, but music's playing, people are dancing, and you know she's going to dance with a guy,
Right.
and he approaches, and I found myself hoping that it was going to be tango. And I mean, I it wasn't, but and I just had this moment and I was thinking, why was I hoping so badly that it would be tango? And it just kind of like my mind just kind of wandered a little bit. And I don't know if that ever happens to you when you're reading a book and then your mind starts wandering. But I was thinking how important tango music was to me, and the dance is beautiful growing up. And I just remember thinking how my peers did not listen to tango music. My mom is from Argentina, and her dad used to sing tango on the radio,
Oh,
and she knows all these words to tango. And my dad, who was born and raised in California, he loves tango music as well. And I just had it in my home. It's not like we listened to it every day, but it was, you
right.
know, definitely there. And so in this moment when my mind's just thinking of all these things, I was thinking like, what a shame it is that some kids, many kids probably,
Mm.
don't listen to tango music. I mean, in the United States, particularly. And I was thinking, I wish there was a way that they can be exposed to tango music, but it's not like you can go around telling everybody to listen to tango music. And I was thinking, I wonder if there's a way to convey that in a story. And the verses that Moni sings in the book are the ones that that's what came to me first before the rest of the
Okay.
story.
Uh-huh.
And I had it, I realized that the rhythm, yeah, was a particular tango song, El, Choclo, El Choclo.
Right.
So I was like, okay, this is the rhythm. And if I can convey this, then I don't have to worry about whether a kid would read it and not get to listen to tango because they will be able to feel it.
Mm.
Because I can't control whether somebody chooses to then listen to it afterwards, but I
Right.
can make sure that it's in the text. So my story kind of unfolded around the verses.
How interesting. What a great Yeah, what a great origin story. I love that. And yeah, my mind wanders all the time. And I find actually a lot of my book ideas do come from another book when I'm reading, but of course it goes in a totally different direction, but just something sparks and then it goes off
Right, of
in a
course.
different direction. Yeah. So I love
Right.
that. Yeah, I love highlighting that because that's a great way to get ideas is by reading. It's another reason reading is so important to us as writers.
I agree.
Yeah. So I'd love to know a bit more about your writing process, not just techniques, but I think although yes, but I think for this particular book, like there's so much language blending happening in this book. So,
Right.
it is bilingual and it's kind of seamlessly back and forth between English and Spanish. And so how did all of that work for you during the writing process?
Well, so before I mentioned the bilingualism, writing those verses took most of the work, to be honest. I would say most of my effort went there because I wanted the cadence to be perfect and I
Right.
didn't want any stumbling. And so I was, writing out my own verses and, marking stressed, unstressed, stressed, unstressed to see what my pattern was. And I was listening to a variety of interpretations of the music on YouTube.
Uh-huh.
And one in particular, I listened to so many times, I can't even count. I don't know if you know who the actor Hugh Laurie is, but he's
Yeah.
also a musician and he has a duet between him and I don't know what woman. I wish I knew. I should have jotted these names down, but um, where she was singing in Spanish and he was singing in English. And it's the words, the English version, people had created lyrics to, I think they called it Ring of, oh, I'm so sorry. I should have thought of these things.
That's okay.
So you can look up Hugh Laurie, and I'm sure you
Sure.
can find it on YouTube. And so I was listening to the way he was singing it and kind of matching, writing down again, stressed, unstressed, stressed, unstressed, seeing if the lyrics match the music rhythm exactly right, stressed, unstressed, stressed, things like that. And then seeing if my own lyrics would match up just right. So that took a lot of effort and time because
Right.
meter is really important to me. So, and especially when I wanted to convey that tango music. And then I actually wrote out the music too. So when you see it in the book, there's a theme. I mean, you can see the music notes kind of going across.
Yes.
That's what I hand wrote, and
Okay.
I sent it in my manuscript to be included in the glossary. The illustrator Catalina, she's just so talented. She took what was in the glossary, and embedded it as art. And
Oh,
I just thought it
beautiful.
was so beautiful. So I would
Yeah.
say those are the things that took me the most effort. I speak Spanish, and so I would say that part wasn't as difficult. I think I wanted to include Spanish in it, but the decision I had to make about the Spanish was, am I going to use Spanish in the two form, like people learn it in high school and wherever else they might take Spanish classes? And I would say a large portion of Spanish speakers would use that.
Hmm.
Or do I want to use the bolseo form in Argentina, where you say bos instead of tu when you're talking to someone? That's like the you form when you're
Okay.
talking to somebody. And I really debated because I wanted it to be familiar to anyone who even took Spanish at some point in their lives, or if they might hear a neighbor speaking it, if you weren't a Spanish speaker, or people who are fluent in Spanish, who are immigrants or, descended from immigrants in the United States who would be speaking Spanish. And
Right.
I thought, oh, the percentage would be so small to do it the Argentine way. But that was the most I would say, pivotal moment in my writing was,
Yeah.
am I going to commit? And I realized if I was going to do it, I had to do it all the way. I didn't want it to be Argentine-ish and have moments. I was like, I'm gonna go all the way. And so that was my biggest decision making factor about including Spanish in my book.
Gotcha. Yeah, I can see where that would have been because it's full of Argentine culture and yeah,
Right.
so yeah, I can see that would have been challenging. I thought it was so interesting how, and I think you do this so well throughout, is you include enough English with the
Mhm.
Spanish that, and with the picture clues as well, that I think most every, I was looking at that a while ago when I was reading back through it, and I thought, I think that anybody who doesn't, because I always think about that when somebody's reading it aloud or and like, what if they don't know Spanish? But I think there's enough there of the English and the pictures that they can figure out. And then you have the glossary in the
Right.
back, of course, too, which
Right.
is fabulous. But I think there's enough in the text that it wouldn't hold anybody up from,
Right.
reading as they go through. So I thought you just did a great job with that.
Thank you. I'm glad that you said that because I really wanted to make sure that you could infer the
Yeah.
meaning. And I would say, I think about 99% of it you can infer.
Yeah.
I think there's maybe like a joke, I think at the end you might not be able to, but I do have the glossary, like you said. I think too, I had to make a decision, and I'm so grateful that Sandra at Gnome Road Publishing included me in this process. She asked me how I felt about italicizing versus not italicizing words in Spanish. And I didn't want to other a language and
Right.
wanted anything that was italicized to be because you're providing emphasis on a word,
Yeah.
not because it was a foreign language word. And
Right.
she was right on board with me, and I appreciated that. I wanted it to visually look seamless, and she was really awesome about that. And I appreciated that. And she appreciated the glossary as well. I kept it in order of appearance, not
Right. Alphabetical.
alphabetized, because I
Mhm.
think somebody had asked me before, like, why wasn't it, alphabetized? And I kind of wanted it to go, in that order.
Right, along with the text, that makes sense. Yeah, and, speaking of Gnome Road Publishing, I gotta say, and I've not had a chance to work personally with them on a book, but they worked with me on an event that my reading council did, and I've worked with Carrie Gonzalez, who did How to Hatch a Reader through Gnome Road, and now, digging into your book. Their books are just so beautiful. They do such a good job. I mean, as a publisher, and they're relatively new in the publishing world,
Right.
I think, but they are just doing fabulous. They're putting out beautiful books, and it's nice. I keep hearing that they've been wonderful to work with. So that's just good to know as
Oh,
people in
yeah.
the industry. Yeah.
Amazing. Amazing to work with.
Yeah.
I really feel so lucky.
I've heard nothing but good things about them, and everything I see that's come out from them has been
Mhm.
absolutely gorgeous. They're just beautiful.
Really talented. Yeah,
Yeah.
very talented people.
Yeah. Well, so speaking of that, let's talk about your path to publication. So how did that come about?
So, I was really fortunate to have a mentorship during the time of my writing the manuscript. And so, Ana Siqueira, she's from
Mhm.
Brazil. I'm sure you've seen books by her. She's incredible.
Mhm.
She was my mentor through a group called Las Musas, and it's
Yes.
a really great resource for people who are starting out. I applied. She picked me to mentor. I will forever be grateful for her. And I think, especially too, because she had been published, it was really good to have her insight. So we workshopped this manuscript pretty intensely in a very short amount of time. So
Okay.
this was probably the quickest manuscript I've ever written. And I would say maybe it took a month, to really feel
Wow.
confident to
Uh-huh.
send it out. I sent it out to, um, I would say, a handful of agents like me, maybe less than 5, around 5. And then another round of around the same. And only 2 people were interested. But when they asked to see more work, they weren't interested in subsequent work of mine. And
Okay.
so that was kind of it. One agent said something that kind of hurt my feelings. And I think that, that happens to people, but
Yeah.
they questioned the appropriateness of speaking about tango to children. And that really shocked me. And I think that it really hurt my feelings because I felt like my culture was under attack and I would have rather just been told no. So I think that sometimes when I think in general you hear positive things about the industry being more accepting of
Yeah.
diverse authors and diverse works. Um, it's not going to always be true when you're actually submitting. And so I'm really grateful for the people who had shown interest. And I just wanted to say that was so I'm one of the reasons I'm so grateful to Gnome Road Publishing for being able to see what I wanted to show and not have misconceptions, I guess, and prejudices. So emotionally, I felt like that set me back. And then I stopped submitting, but participated in PB Pitch, and it was in January of 2021. And then I got a like from Gnome Road Publishing, submitted to them. So I wrote the manuscript October of 2020, and then got the like January of 2021 on a pitch. So those Twitter pitch events actually work sometimes. They do.
Yep. I can
And
vouch for
then,
that too.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I got a letter asking for a revise and resubmit. And they actually said, a couple of things they were interested in and wondering if I would be willing to consider. And yeah, I was like, you know what? This is a missing piece.
Oh,
So I revised and I had, critique partners look at it and my mentor look at it and sent a resubmission. And on April 1st, April Fool's Day, 2021, but it was real, I had a Zoom meeting with Sandra at Gnome Road Publishing, and it was just fabulous to hear someone love my manuscript in a way that I didn't even imagine could happen.
such a great feeling. Yeah. That's awesome. So cool. So we've already been delving into this some because it's just tango is all over this book. But let's specifically focus on that for a bit. So the musical connections in this book. Now you're a musician yourself, right?
I am. Yeah,
Yeah.
I play the flute. I sing, but that's mostly like at church. Um, but yeah, I play the flute. I minored in music.
Mm-hmm.
I've played the drums. I've dabbled in bagpipes. Music is really special to me.
Yeah. It's such an integral part of our lives, especially for those of us who do love it. So let's talk about these musical connections. I mean, you already mentioned that you had written the sheet music actually for this, and you see
Mhm.
that it's so beautifully integrated, as you said, into the artwork. I didn't realize that was, I mean, I had noticed that it was so cool how she wove it into the illustrations, but until you said that, I didn't realize that was actually the music that you had written. So
Yeah,
that's just really fantastic to know that. So I mean, there's obviously music in that way in the book, and then there's tons of talk about tango and even some of the Spanish words for some of the instruments. Um,
right.
so yeah, I don't mean to steal your thunder. I'm just rattling on about it. But yeah,
Yeah.
what would you like for us to know about the music in the book?
I'm like, I think you covered it. No, um
Sorry.
yeah, no, it's okay. I love music. I feel
Yeah.
like it is part of who I am. And I feel like this book is definitely the most personal thing I've ever written. And it sounds kind of funny because you're like, you have an experience with Little Red Riding Hood. I know that's not real, but everything else is actually very real to me. And, my love of languages and, my bachelor's degree was in Spanish and my culture, my background,
Yeah.
um, Argentine, and then my love of music, which I said I minored in music, and
Yeah.
I just felt like all of those things. I feel so lucky that something that means so much to me, ended up being published.
Mhm.
So yeah, Tango, I really wanted, I don't know, I felt like I had to have some sheet music in there. I just felt like it was important to me
Yeah.
because not only did I feel like the rhythm could help teach kids what a tango song felt like,
Mhm.
but kids learn instruments at a young age. I mean, even in schools, they start taking strings, and fourth grade typically is what I've heard and what my kids experienced. And I thought, how neat would it be if I included, sheet music in there that somebody really could actually sit down at a piano or pick up an instrument and play.
Yeah.
And even if they can't right when they got it, but at some point in their lives do it, I
Mhm.
wanted them to be able to see what it looked like, to be able to play it themselves. That was really important to me. So I'm really happy. I'm glad that I'm glad. I really wanted to include the instrument bandoneon in there. That's a really key instrument in tango music. And I love that kids can actually look at an instrument that might seem familiar, but be maybe a little different, and just have another instrument they can put in their drawers in their minds of
Exactly.
instruments that they know. Like, oh, that's just so exciting for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was fascinating, and I was not familiar. So, I love picture books where I get to learn a little something. And being, taking Spanish right now, I'm doing the Duolingo thing, learning
Oh,
Spanish.
great.
Well, my debut picture book is set in Barcelona, Spain. And
Oh,
so,
nice.
yeah, we're hoping to go to Barcelona the summer before the book releases. So I'm kind of stepping up my
Oh,
Spanish right now.
yeah.
So fingers crossed, we'll see.
Good
But
for you. Good
yeah,
for
but
you.
but it was so cool to see a lot of those, words that I've learned, and like, oh, I know this, like you get to feel proud of yourself for kids that are learning, Spanish, and they're going to see
Right.
those things that are connected. But then there's some new pieces too, like the name for the cookies, like that's new to me. And then the instrument, like that was new to me too. I didn't know that. So it's always fun when, as an adult, we get to, and I say this all the time, picture books are for everybody. Everybody.
Yeah,
I don't care how old you
absolutely.
are, they're for everybody. And there's always things that you can learn and you can enjoy and you can appreciate about picture books. I don't know if you're familiar. I'm sidelining here for a second, but I don't know if you're familiar with the guy I've seen him on Instagram. He's probably a ton of other places, but his handle is Oliver Speaks. Oh, I forget his last name, but his name's Oliver, and he's teaching himself to read. He's a young African American man. But anyway, he's teaching himself to read. He had learning struggles in school and whatever. He's now as an adult. I mean, he has a kid who's, I don't know, 10, 12, something. And he's made a goal this year, well, this past year, of reading 100 books as he's teaching himself
Wow.
to read. And it's been a lovely blend of picture books and chapter books and mental health, books and things like that. But he's all the time talking about, how picture books, he's really enjoying this picture book or this picture book. And he says, I'm not above reading a picture book. Like, I love picture books. And
Oh,
so
right.
yeah, I love that. I love that there's another
Right.
grown up out there saying, picture books are not just for kids. So anyway,
Oh,
sorry,
for
that was
sure. That's most of my dates with my husband. before and after we were married, we're going to, it was, back when Borders existed, going to
Right.
Borders and just going straight to the children's book section because I always loved it. I never stopped loving picture books. So I always was reading it. I mean, my entire life. And so, and that's why I think I wanted to be writing picture books because I just always loved them and to be able
Yeah.
to make up a story and have someone read it. And so, yeah, I absolutely think that picture books are for adults.
Everybody, yes, absolutely. Yeah, my husband, he jokes and he'll laugh sometimes. Every time we go to the bookstore, he has to endure at least one read aloud.
Yeah, no, that's great.
Yeah,
That's
yeah, but
great.
I think they are. They're so fabulous.
Can I go back to something you had said?
Absolutely.
So there are a couple things. Well, one, alfajores are a particular type of cookie. They're made mostly out of, well, these are the homemade ones out of cornstarch.
Oh,
And it gives it a different texture than other cookies. And it's very crumbly, but very delicious. And it has dulce de leche in between. And I do have the recipe that I used that my mom gave me on my website. So if somebody wants to know how to make them, they're there. So the other thing I wanted to mention, because you were talking about learning a language and um, because I think another thing that was important for me to convey, and this has happened to me, was that you're going to make mistakes and that it's okay. And I am the kind of person who doesn't want to make a mistake, and I don't want to make a mistake publicly.
yeah.
Um, and that's why it kept me from actually speaking Spanish to people for quite some time
Mhm.
because I didn't want to make a mistake. And I finally realized I'm done with hiding the fact that I know Spanish, and my Spanish is never going to sound as good if I'm not speaking it. And so, anyway, I started speaking it more frequently, and I did make an embarrassing mistake. When I was speaking to somebody, I was talking about how to make a particular recipe, and I said sand instead of flour. And this grown man laughed and laughed. And I wanted to kind of brush it off and go, oh, whoops, and keep going. But he couldn't even move on in our conversation because he just kept laughing. And I was miffed at first, but I we get along and it's fine. But I was miffed and embarrassed, and then, just had to shrug and go, it is what it is. And I'm proud of myself for just speaking it anyway. So it isn't my first language, it's my second language. And especially when you don't live in a Spanish speaking country, you
Right.
don't use it as much as your primary language
Mhm.
or the language in the country in which you live. And you know what? You have to cut yourself some slack, be willing to be a little embarrassed. And the thing is, other people are learning other languages too.
Yeah.
And people that you're surrounded by are sometimes learning English. And,
Right.
we all can understand each other and cut each other some slack, smile and go, you know what? I'll laugh at myself too, and then move on.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that element of the book, and I think that's so important because you're right. It's hard to put yourself out there when you're learning a new language, but I think it's so great, and I think it helps us appreciate our friends who come to America and they're learning English. Like I think when we're learning another language, like I know for myself, I am struggling with like verb conjugations, and you think about all the times that you've heard maybe a Spanish speaking person or maybe another language who a person who's learning English as their second language, and they'll totally mess up the verb conjugations, right? Like they say I don't know, but they'll totally mess it up, and that seems funny to us, but when you try to learn another language you're like, oh snap, I totally get it now, brother
Right,
and sister. I mean, that stuff
right,
is hard. I can say comer, and I know that means to eat, but figuring out which version of that to say, I don't know. I'm going to
right,
tell you, I eat tortillas. If I ate it now or yesterday or 3 months ago or tomorrow, it's going to be
right,
the same
right,
right now because that's all
right.
I got.
And irregular verbs. And I keep hearing how hard English is to learn because there's just not a lot of concrete rules. There's a lot of exceptions. And so, yeah, it is hard. And in Spanish too, it can be hard because even if it's a lot easier to learn than some languages are, every country has their own set of vocabulary words.
Yeah.
So when I'm speaking Spanish to somebody, sometimes I have to, think, okay, well, what do they call that? Because
Right.
just because I have a Spanish word rattling around in my mind doesn't necessarily mean it's the Spanish word that they use. So,
Right.
even then, you just have to always be open and willing to listen and learn.
Yeah, for sure. And even regional vocabulary, like I wrote a manuscript. It's been, I don't know, probably a couple of years ago, maybe 3 years ago now. And I had put it on the SCBWI forum, for somebody to critique. And so I'm from the South, right? And so the hats that you wear over your head in the winter that cover your ears and they're knitted or crocheted or whatever, like we call those toboggans, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but obviously other people in the United States, they don't know that we call them toboggans. When I had written a manuscript and I said this, it was a really, I don't even know. Anyway, I was using that word as the beanie hat,
I
right?
see. Okay.
But she's like, that does not make any sense. Like a toboggan is a sled. And
Yeah,
I'm like,
right.
okay, but it also can be, a winter, what do you call a
Okay.
winter hat? And she's like, we call it a hat. You know?
Oh, that's funny. I was actually about to ask you, what does she call it? I'm not even that familiar with the term for that hat, but that's because I don't live in an area where people need to wear those hats. So,
Right.
like,
Right. So, and I mean, I just recently learned, oh, some people call them beanies. Okay, I'm going to call them beanies now. I'm going to add that to my lexicon. I still call them toboggans to my students when they come in. Hang your toboggan. But I mean, obviously, my friends
that's
in the north,
interesting.
yeah.
So
So,
you're talking about the one that covers the ears and you can tie it?
no, not even tied. Just it just pulls down.
Oh, it
Like,
pulls around
yeah,
like you can knit them.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh
Just a
yeah,
little
I
knitted
would
hat.
call that a beanie. I thought you were talking about the ones
Yeah.
that have the flaps because
I
I
don't
don't
even
know
know.
those.
I don't know what those are
I
called either.
Yeah,
Yeah. But no, just
yeah.
the knitted or crocheted ones that you just pull down over your
Mhm.
ears. But yeah, so we call them toboggans here. But so even in the United States, I mean, there's
Right.
still different words for different things. We don't realize how much of that there is. I think it's fascinating. I could talk
Mhm.
about that a long time too. I have a manuscript I've written about that, but it's kind of in the dinosaur drawer right now. It's gonna have
Yeah.
to wait and come back to it later. But I do love
Right.
it. It's fascinating to me. All the languages, yes, that's fascinating to me too, Rachel. I love, yeah, dialects and languages and all that stuff are so fascinating. But to get us back on track, because that was just a fun conversation, um, let us know what's coming next for you. Do you have other books coming down the pike, or are you doing some events that you want to make us aware of? What would you like for us to know about what's next for Rachel?
Well, I don't have anything that's been acquired yet. There are some things that I've written. One project has been massive, a massive undertaking because I was given a really great critique and told that pretty much it would be better as a middle grade.
Ah,
And that's like intimidating for me,
yeah,
especially because I'd been told something like that about another manuscript and I had started converting that to a chapter book and then put that one on hold. And then now I'm working on this other. So it's intimidating and I feel like a really different process than writing a picture book for
yeah,
me
yeah,
anyway. So I've just been doing a lot of outlining, a lot of world building, taking a lot of notes, reading books on craft. So that
mm,
takes some time. I did write another story that I'm hoping to get, really out there soon. I had interest on a pitch event recently,
mm,
so we'll see. I don't know if that's going to go anywhere, but just always creating,
yeah,
taking notes, writing things down, organizing, just the stuff that sometimes feels slow, so it doesn't sound exciting. So nothing exciting.
But it's all part of the process, and we all
It is.
have to do it. Yeah, yeah,
Right.
absolutely. Well, it's all about moving us forward, whatever we're working on in the moment. And that sounds like some really promising things. And I feel you on the intimidation factor. I have a couple that, yeah, I know they're going to end up, and I just keep pushing them to the back because I'm like, I'm
Yeah,
not ready to tackle middle grade yet. I'm not ready to
right.
tackle chapter books. Nope, just set that to the back. So,
Right. I was telling a coworker, I actually said, I'm like, okay, I'm ready. I got all my stuff, all this pre-work. Oh, so much. It's taken
yeah,
a lot of time, a lot of effort. And then I was like, I'm too scared. I'm too scared to actually start writing it. So
yeah.
I don't know. I have to build the courage. I have to build up some courage.
Yeah, courage is huge in the writing world. Huge, huge. I don't think we talk about it enough. It takes a lot of courage to put our pen to paper or put our fingers to
Yeah.
the keyboard, but then a whole nother level of courage to tackle something new, a new genre like we're talking
Right.
about, or to put that out in front of people, either for them to critique
That's
it or
oh, that's so hard.
to
Yeah.
query it. Yeah, I mean
Right.
it all takes courage.
That's so hard to do. And I feel like I am good at reading them and I'm good at analyzing them. And that's part of what I do for my day job. I do a lot of reading manuscripts and analyzing and whatever, but it's different when you're the one creating it.
Right.
It's a different kind of mindset. And so I think I am a little bit scared about that. As for events, I don't have anything in the works right now. So I only did three store events. And then I kind of just needed a little bit of a break.
Mhm.
And I some people just have the energy to keep going, and I knew I needed to kind of stop. Also, gas is expensive and
Yeah.
it was getting costly driving even just to those events.
Right.
So I thought, you know what, give myself a break, and at the new year, I'm going to start, hopefully putting some events on my calendar.
Wonderful. Well, if you guys are interested in an event for Rachel, then you've heard it here. So reach out to her. For sure. I'm going to list all of her socials and all the things below that you need to follow her journey and to purchase the book if you have not, because it is just so amazing. And, as I was reading back over it earlier, I'm just super stoked to get to put all these resources together for this episode for teachers out there. So if you're a teacher and you're watching, make sure you go below on the episode. And if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you go to the blog and look at the full episode because there's going to be so many fun teaching ideas. Like teachers would have a blast with this book. There's so many different things, and I think this one just it lends itself so beautifully to ESL and to migrant education. So that's a whole nother layer that I don't usually get to put in that I'm going to get to put in this time. So make sure you look at all those great resources. Remember, there's so many great ways to support our authors. Even if you can't purchase books, we know you can't purchase all the books we love because yeah, you'd run out of room and you'd run out of money and all the things, but there's so many great ways that you can support our authors in other ways, leaving reviews for them on Amazon, Goodreads, Barnes and Noble, I think has a place where you can review them there as well. Recommending them to friends via word of mouth, social media shout outs. All of those are great ways. Requesting them at your local library. If you have a local bookstore, asking them to stock them. Those are all great ways to support authors without costing you any money at all whatsoever. So we hope that you will do that. This is a super fun book, and I think you're going to want to somehow get it into your library, whether it's just through borrowing it or purchasing it. But I for me, I'm going to definitely want to purchase a copy. So that's my vote for you. So enjoy it however you get to, and be sure to support Rachel. Follow her on all of her socials. My tongue's getting tied at this point. But follow her and give her all the kudos and write those good reviews and let people know about this fabulous book. And thank you again, Rachel, for being here. It's been such
Thank
a fun
you.
conversation.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your enthusiasm and for being a wonderful host.
Oh, thank you. I think we could talk a long time between music and languages and picture
Right.
books. Dang, we could do this for a while. But we're going to let you go. And so thank you for joining us for this episode of PB Jams, and we hope we will see you next time. So
Thank you.
PBJamz, reading, writing, teaching. PBJamz, what a yummy treat. Jamming PBs all the time. PBJamz, jams, jams, jams. Picture books and jams. We'll see you next time.